Hello, Internet. How's everyone doing today? I'm doing great. But yesterday, Call of Duty announced its new game, Call of Duty Vanguard, released the trailer, World War II. If you guys don't know, I'm a, I love World War II. I think it's so interesting, and I've done a whole lot of research into it. So I know that some people might have some questions about if this is factual, like what's going on with the game, stuff like that. And I would like to answer those questions because I would just like to, yeah, basically, yeah. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. We're gonna watch the trailer. I'm gonna try to break it down, see what facts are true or not, and then I'm gonna go to another channel who's got a bit more information about it because he's got inside source. It's Ink Slasher. If you haven't subscribed to him, go subscribe to him. He does great content. Always has reliable information. So yeah, let's get started. Okay. Okay. We'll stop it right there. That right there, that could be literally anywhere. Those bombers, those planes, I can't tell what those are. They might be Spitfires. If you guys don't know, Spitfires were used by the Allies. They were the British fighter planes. They were the fastest planes in the sky at the time. So they were very agile. They absolutely destroyed the Luftwaffe, which was the German fighter plane. Um, so I don't know where that is, but it's on fire, which means it's being bombed. At this point in time, a lot of cities were still mainly made out of wood. So you would see bombers that would bomb in place, and it would just be on fire for months because no one could put out the fire. And that's what it kind of looks like.
The whole world is burning.
It actually might be a German city because I've watched this trailer before, and I've been told that those are the main players. Those are the allies. So might be a German city that is being bombed right now. So
Sometimes, the only way to put out the flames is with more fire.
that's a woman. I think that's a woman. Okay. This this looks like Soviet Union. Oh yeah. So this looks like the Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad was after the Nazis had taken most of Europe. So France, Netherlands, Belgium, um, Norway, and they were now fighting with the United Kingdom. They couldn't get over there, so Hitler, unbeknownst to his generals, started a second front of the war. Before all that, Hitler and Stalin had made a pact, which was out of the blue because Hitler did not like Stalin, did not like communism, and when Hitler and Stalin made that pact, shocked the world because they both hated each other. And when Hitler kind of hit a brick wall and didn't really get anywhere, he attacked Soviet Union, and for the longest time, the Soviet Union just kept retreating because they got Blitzkrieg, which is lightning war, was just absolutely dominating them. I mean, destroying them, and and they kept falling back. And then on their way to Moscow, they needed Hitler's troops needed to be replenished. They were running low, a bit low on oil and food, and down south was the Soviet oil fields, with which, if you know your history and you know what's going on in the world, the Soviet Union has a large deposit of oil. and they headed south down there. And on the way, they were on the way. There's a town, there's a city called Stalingrad, and this is a very key point because it runs along a river, and it's the Soviet supply river. In Stalingrad, they make the tanks and armaments for the troops, so it did provide a strategical point. So what they did was they split the forces in half. One force went south to get the oil. Another force went to go get Stalingrad. And the Soviets were expecting the Germans to attack as they usually did, with a large artillery force first, and then would come the planes, then would come the tanks and the infantry. But instead what happened was the sky was just filled with bombers. They attacked with bombers first, and it lit the Stalingrad city ablaze, because it was still mostly made out of wood, and fires burned for months. And by the end of it, Stalingrad was literally an apocalyptic wasteland. Like, it was burned to rubble. If you go back and look at the pictures, it's actually like terrifying. If you see the before and after, it's scary. And that's basically how it started. So this looks like Stalingrad. This was the pick. Okay, so those who don't really know, before the Allies got to Europe, they had to go through North Africa because the Nazis had occupied North Africa. And the Americans and Australians were actually a big part in North Africa, and they had to push through North Africa first, because one of Hitler's things was he was going to want to take apart Africa because they are also rich with oils and stuff like that. So they had to push through North Africa first. I just heard something. Okay, this has to be Stalingrad. Has to be Stalingrad. Ah, yes. Interesting thing. So, it's mostly thought of that women were not involved in World War II, that they hadn't become a main part of the military yet. But the Soviets, they actually wanted women part of in the war, and the women threw in their lot just as much as the men. They were medics, snipers, fighter pilots, gunners, basically everything you can imagine. But they're mostly snipers. Like, a large number of women were snipers, and one of them was what became quite famous in Stalingrad. She was the highest scoring woman sniper in all of war. I forget her name, but it's some like ominous ghost or something like that. And I guess during this we play as a Soviet sniper who's in Stalingrad. And actually, during Battle Stalingrad, snipers were used quite often because in urban warfare, there's so many places to hide for a sniper, because you can get the perfect line of sight between some rubble and no one can ever see you. Let's keep moving on. It's definitely something. Okay, so that's a British voice. So these might be British commandos. British commandos were badass. Like, they were basically the special forces before special forces were invented. Their job was to go behind enemy lines and sabotage the enemy. Like, their job was to blow shit up and just mess them up. So I guess you are a commando who's dropped into the meat grinder and is supposed to sabotage the enemy in some way. Visual for this. There's something. So we get into some air battles. Those looked like Japanese Zeros. Japanese Zeros were the planes that the Japanese used. They were very good airplanes. Japanese Zeros were very good airplanes. They were agile and fast. They were very much a match for the American airplanes. Okay. I don't know what this invasion is, but it looks like it's in the Pacific. A lot of battles would look this way in the Pacific because when the Japanese attacked on D-Day, they attacked multiple different islands that the U.S. held. They were U.S. territories. And they did that because Japan still really relies on imports for oil and ammunition. Because if you don't know, Japan doesn't have a whole lot of oil refineries or metal. It's why they made katanas, because katanas were one of the best weapons made. They were melded over each other because folded over and over again to make the steel stronger, because they didn't have enough metal to make just swords with. So they had to be efficient. And so what the Japanese had to do was they had to take islands that the United States held, because they had oil and steel and stuff like that. But after Midway and after Midway, the United States started something that's called island hopping, which is when they would attack one island, take it, hop over to another island, take it, hop over to another island, take it. That's what's called island hopping. They just never spread out their forces to multiple islands. They focused all the forces on one island, took it, hopped over to another one. So a lot of battles would probably look like this. American Marines would be rushing onto the island, taking it. The Japanese would be defending it. So I don't know which battle is this.
There's no curtain call for bravery.
Bravery's what comes after, not what you were in the moment.
That looks like a American Sherman. The American Sherman tank wasn't the best tank, but it was one of the well-built most well-built tanks. It was developed by Ford, the Ford Motor Company. A lot of accounts say that it drove just like a car. It had a gas, had a clutch, it had brakes. Because tanks back then, there were two levers, and push both forward to go forwards, push both back to stop or go backwards, and then you can push one forward. If you push the right one forward, you go right, and then other way around if you want to go left. It was very robotic, but what they had was really like two sticks, gas, brake, clutch. If you want to go forward, push both sticks forward and press on the gas. It was very much more, a whole lot easier to drive. Felt more like a car. So another thing about the Shermans was that there wasn't a particular type. It was just the Sherman, and then they could take off parts. It was very customizable. You could fit your tank with a different size barrel. You could make it so that it had little spikes on the end of it, whipping spikes to blow up landmines before you got onto a landmine and destroyed your tank. You can outfit your tank no matter how you wanted to. Yeah, that's a Japanese voice. It's very specific. Oh yeah, that's another Russian woman.
Whatever we do, we do it together.
Still don't know what this mission is. It looks like we're back with the commandos.
Pre-order now and get early access to the open beta. Digital pre-orders get instant access to the Night Raid, Mastercraft, and Black Ops, Cold War, and Warzone.
Okay. So that was the trailer. I tried to go over it as best as I could. And then now we're going to go to Ink Slasher, who has a bit more information. So let me go over to his thing here. Don't pay attention to it. It's just an ad. Blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you guys know, and as I talked about earlier today, Call of Duty Vanguard has officially been revealed. And with that, we are getting tons of information about pre-orders, bonuses, multiplayer, Warzone. But as you guys know, one of my focuses on this channel is the story of Call of Duty. And I was actually fortunate enough to be a part of a call about a week ago where Call of Duty actually showed us a bunch of the story and campaign details going into Call of Duty Vanguard. They talked about the characters, the overall story, and they even showed us a campaign mission, which is really, really interesting. So in this video, that is exactly what we are going to be talking about, the campaign for Call of Duty Vanguard, going over what the story actually is for this and some details revolving around that. I'm also going to go in depth with the mission that they showed us, talking about everything that happens in it and what it looks like the campaign is going to look like moving forward and what this means for the campaign of Call of Duty Vanguard. So without further ado, I think the best place to start with this is kind of the background of the story, which is actually the characters. So one thing with this game that they made very clear is that yes, it is based off of history, but it doesn't follow history exactly, which I definitely think is a good thing. An example of this in the game is the bad guy, the antagonist, called Henrik Freisinger. Probably saying that wrong, but essentially what this is he is the director of the Gestapo. Now this is based off of a real life person named Henrik Mueller, and
that is true. Henrik Mueller was the head of the Gestapo.
Basically, they are recreating this character, and he is going to be the main antagonist. But we also have several good characters. Now, the first character that we have is named Polina Petrova. She is a Russian sniper, and she is essentially there to... Again,
I explained earlier, women were used as snipers. They were very good snipers because what it takes to be a sniper is patience and precision. And women have those traits, are a lot more in tune with those traits than men.
Stop the Germans during the invasion of Russia. Now, she is based off of a real-life person named Lyudmila Pavlichenko.
Yeah, that's the name. I can't pronounce it, but it's Lyudmila Pavlichenko.
As far as she goes, she was known during World War II as Lady Death. Now, she is
That's the one. Lady Death. Yep, now I remember. Okay, it's going back. Yeah, she was the best Russian sniper. Well, actually, best sniper in the Soviet military.
Most successful female sniper of all time, and she was known by the Germans because of this. Now, once again, creating this character of Polina Petrova to kind of reenact her or be her within the game. Now, the second character that we have is called Captain Wade Jackson, and he's the one that you see in the fighter pilot in the Pacific area during the trailer. And as far as this character goes, he is based off of Vernon Michel, who was an American fighter pilot who took off in the Battle of Midway. Now, in the story in-game, essentially what happens is he gets shot down in the air and lands in the Solomon Islands. Now, at this time, he then becomes the hero of Solomon Islands, and we follow that story within the game. The third character that we have is named Lucas Riggs, and he is part of the Commonwealth Forces of Australia. Now, this character, you follow him through North Africa and Egypt, and he is kind of fighting alongside the tanks in this area in the Battle of Alamein. And as far as this goes, Australian forces were a very big part of it, hence why we see Lucas Riggs in this area. Now, finally, we have Arthur Kingsley. Now, this is the character who we saw in the teasers. We saw his name. And as far as Kingsley goes, he is the leader of Task Force Vanguard. And as far as he goes, he's actually one of the characters I have the least information on, but we know that he is the leader. Now, with all of these characters, essentially the story that Call of Duty Vanguard is telling is the story of how special forces were created by telling the story of Task Force Vanguard. A bunch of different soldiers with a bunch of different specialties that come together. And the story that they are telling is an interesting one. Now, based off of the information we're given off of the several different fronts, the way I think the story is going to be told told is that they're going to give us a little bit of backstory on these 4 different characters, and by the end of the game, they're all going to come together and going to be sent to Berlin. In fact, we have been told that they are going to be sent to Berlin to figure out something about Project Phoenix. Now, we don't know what that is, but it has something to do with World War II, and what we know is that all of these 4 characters will be getting captured when they go into Berlin. They get interrogated, but we don't know what really happens to them other than that. Now, the first part, the story of these 4 characters, I did get to see one particular mission, and you see a part of it in the trailer.
Okay, this one, which I think might be D-Day. We will be invasion force before D-Day.
So the mission that we got to see, they told us, was from early on in the game and was Operation Tonga, which was led by Kingsley. Now, as far as this goes, this was a real-life mission.
Yeah,
it happened during D-Day.
Yep,
and it was
right.
where the airborne divisions were getting dropped in.
Yes, it's when, before D-Day, they had this, like, so a little bit of backstory. Hitler and the Nazis knew that after they took France, they knew that the Allies would eventually come and try to retake France and Europe from them. So they basically made the entire coast of where UK is a fortress. Like, they set up trenches, minefields, bunkers, artillery, anti-airplane guns. Like, they made it a fortress. And so before the Allies could go and storm Normandy, they had to clear some anti-air guns and some minefields because the way D-Day started off was they started off with a heavy air offensive. They were going to try to bomb the Nazis to try to soften them up a little bit, and then to clear the minefields so that the soldiers could get onto the beach and get into the fight without being held up by mines. And it was a very dangerous mission, and not a whole lot of people survived.
Behind enemy lines, and that is what we saw in the little bit of the mission there, with the character dropping in from the sky, his parachute burning up, falling to the ground. But we got to see a little bit more than that. You see, the part that we got to see is once your character got to the ground and landed in the water, he got out and began sneaking through the forest, where he did the flash and thunder technique, where if any of you have seen any Band of Brothers, which if you haven't seen Band of Brothers, I really
watch Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers. It's a really good TV show. It's probably one of the best World War II things, reenactments ever made. So yeah, go out and watch it.
Recommend going and checking that out now. Really, really good show.
Yes.
But as far as this happens, you're sneaking through the woods, and eventually you pick up a Car 98 without any scope on it. Now, it's unfortunate that I don't actually have any gameplay to show of this to you guys, because one thing that I noticed right away is you pick up a Car 98 with very little bullets. In the next little area of the mission, your character is kind of struggling to find this ammo, and eventually gets to the back of a vehicle where he searches through a chest that you actually have to go through and pick up the proper ammo for your weapon. Now, at this point, you go inside of a building and are hiding under some floorboards where the enemies are in. This was the moment that I realized.
What the Nazis did was whenever, especially when the Allies got to Germany, is they would hide in floorboards. They would hide in floorboards so they could come out and attack. So 1 second, the Allies thought they would have taken a street, and then like 10 seconds later, they would have found out, like, hey, we're being shot at from behind because apparently someone's still in that building, which we thought was cleared. But Nazis would be hiding on the floor, and they would have like a whole lot of guns and stuff in there.
That this looked a lot and I mean a lot, like a mission from Modern Warfare. Now, it's not identical, and by no means does it match up with what you do in the mission Clean House, but the same sort of feeling was there, where it was super close quarters and almost felt like real life, going through the staircase, through the doorways, which felt like the proper dimensions for what it would be like if you were actually there. On top of that, the graphics reminded me of Modern Warfare, and it makes sense because this game is running off of the Modern Warfare engine. Now, this part of the mission is super close quarters. There's some guys running on the outside of the building, which you can actually shoot through the walls and kill them, which is what they did in the little gameplay trailer that they showed us. But as it moves on further, eventually you go outside. Now, this was the very last scene that we saw of this gameplay, but once again, he was doing the whole flash thunder thing with some sort of soldier who wasn't seemingly responding, and at the very end, the enemy soldier, or what you appears to be an enemy soldier, starts to raise the weapon, and boom, the mission cut out. So we don't know actually what happened, whether it was a friendly soldier or an enemy soldier, but what we do know is that is all we got to see. Now, what I will say based off of this is, first of all, the graphics were incredible for this. Really reminded me of that close quarters mission of Clean House within Modern Warfare, and I'm very interested to see more of this. They went with a super cinematic feel, which was one of the things I loved about Modern Warfare, which is seemingly going to be returning in this game once again. Now, the other thing that you can see from the trailer is that they are very much so going with the very different themes of the different areas of World War II. For example, you have the winter in Stalingrad, you have the oceans of the Pacific, you also have the battlefields and deserts in North Africa, which all have a very different feel to them, and somehow this story is all going to come together with that task force Vanguard that we saw before, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they tell that story. But all in all, after seeing all of this, it really has me excited for the campaign. First of all, I think World War II campaigns are always done pretty well by Call of Duty, but incorporating that Modern Warfare engine and storytelling elements with what they did with Modern Warfare, this has potential to be a really good Call of Duty campaign, and I think it's going to come down to what they do with the storytelling of the characters, which they seem to be focusing on really hard. The kind of tagline that they gave us for this is they were focusing on the human story and how the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and we see that in many different circumstances during World War II, where people were forced to fight in the war and somehow...
Okay, I think that's all the information we've got. So, yeah, that's looking it's looking pretty accurate for World War II. There are a couple made up stuff, but yeah, I do like how they are how they're paying more homage to Soviet women, how they fought. It basically, because I see in a lot of World War II games how it's doing just like one front of the war and that's it. It's mostly the Western Front against the Americans and the British versus the Nazis. These days I haven't seen a whole lot of World War II games that deal with multiple fronts, because I don't know why they don't do that, because it's a world war. There's a lot of countries involved, and I like how they're putting in as much fronts as they can. They got the Pacific, Eastern, North Africa, battle in North Africa and Egypt, the Western Front. Excuse me, the Western Front. I like how they're incorporating as many as that stuff in there as they can. So yeah, that's all I've got, since there's nothing else left. There's no more information that I have, but if there's any more information, if there's anything that I feel is that I need to explain, I will. So if you guys like what you see, like and subscribe. See you all later.